Hello, this is a quick video guide for a script that I'm working on called Erasmus. This is a version 0.1 and the tutorial is also version 0.1. Don't be intimidated by my use of a grid 256. This is designed to work great with the grid 128. So Erasmus is a looper based on Samsara, but sort of broken out into be like a more full-featured kind of performance interface with different things you can do. So the first big difference is that we're actually loading samples locally instead of relying exclusively on external input. That means that you only kind of need the one device in order to maybe do a whole performance. The way that you get audio on there is that you drop it into the Erasmus audio folder on the Norns. So dust, audio, Erasmus. Yeah. And then these different blocks that you see here are from things that are stored in different folders. So the folders sort of like organically populate the space of these like bottom 6 rows of the grid, and then they're given a sort of color offset. Don't worry about the glowing ones for now. In fact, I think I'm going to make a quick change to make all those go away. Fear not, our special glowing buttons will return in the near future. So the first thing to note is that there are 3 different areas in the menu. We'll cover area 1 first. This is your track selector. You actually have 3 different buffers as well as a global section. So 1, 2, 3 global. Then this is for the length. This is in binary. So right now we have a length of 1, and then here you go to a length of 2, and the buffer is automatically tiled with all of the contents. This would be a length of 4. This would be a length of 3. So the best way to think about this is 1, that's 2, that's 4, that's 8, that's 16, that's 32, and you're adding that many sort of cells to the length, that many beats to the length of the buffer whenever you have those buttons up. So the sort of crude way to think about it is, which will work for like 98% of the time, is that each one of these buttons that's lit represents doubling the length of the buffer. And then you really only need to get into the nitty-gritty of the other stuff if you have really specific odd timings that you want to execute. And then here is pitch control. So this is down an octave, that's down a minor 7th, that's down a 5th, down a 4th, down a whole step, and then the same but up instead of down, and then this is a reverse button. Then here you have an isolator. So this cuts the lows, cuts the mids, cuts the highs, and that clears all the isolator data. Isolator gestures are recorded in a data buffer that runs parallel to your audio buffer. So you can record an isolator performance and have it stick. Keep in mind, though, that this will apply to live audio unless you execute some other interventions, which we'll talk about in the future. This is a sort of auto chop and shuffle. So what that does is it slices your audio into n evenly sized portions and then shuffles them and populates the buffer with this new reshuffled version. So that's 2 pieces of audio, 3 pieces, 4 pieces, 5 pieces, 6 pieces, 7 pieces, 8 pieces that you end up getting. So this is really nice if you have like a really short buffer and you want to get a sort of cross-rhythmic feel. You take your short buffer, you cut it into 3 pieces or maybe 5 pieces, and then you duplicate it out, and then you play in 4 under it, and that thing will actually be playing, like 20 discrete slices cross-rhythmically on top of whatever else you do. Then here we have a momentary punch out. So when you press this, it clears the buffer temporarily. Here we have whether or not you're recording into the buffer at all, which you can activate and deactivate. Here we have the clear button. Here we have whether or not samples, I actually don't know what that button does. I'm gonna go look into that later. And here we have a tap tempo. And whenever you tap tempo, it also affects the pitch of the audio material. So if you want to stay nice and 12 tone equal temperament, then you should use these to change tempo instead of using the tap tempo, but tap tempo is always nice to have. And then we have external audio monitoring. which you can toggle here. And then we have external audio recording, which you can toggle here, which will get us some audio in the buffer. So that's coming from the atrium. Now it's continuing to play. So let's, for instance, go down an octave. Let's go up an octave. Let's chop it into 3 pieces and see what it sounds like all chopped up. Maybe you can hear, maybe you can't, but now it's got this like sort of rhythmic bass to it. So I'm also gonna drop a hi-hat in here. Okay, recording's off so I can find my hi-hat. That's where I was hoping it was. Right, so that's kind of my metronome. And then I'll go ahead and quadruple the length of the buffer by pressing those 2 buttons. And then and we've got our little fucked up beat, but it's kind of too fucked up. So let's go back to a really short distance here, and then let's cut it in half so you get this sort of lethargic looping thing. And then let's just duplicate that out, and let's try to get a more sensible beat going. Or not, I don't know, this sounds fine, right? And then I have some other samples that I can play on top of it. Like, I think these will be, there we go. And then I also have there's that guitar stab. So here's another guitar stab. That's pretty fun. And then here you can see our brightest one is our first track, and that's moving across here. This other one is both of the other 2 tracks. So I can jump around, right? Like over here is just a kick, and then over here is some guitar stabby thing. Okay, so what did I do there? This button is special in that it takes whatever audio, so this arm's recording, and then whatever you play gets saved to tape, and then it gets written back into the audio buffer, and it automatically detects the length and the BPM of whatever that material is. So you can use this to like improvise a specific performance into a specific length of audio buffer. Say you have a sample in here that's actually a loop, and you want it to like loop evenly, and you know where the loop ends, then you would arm to record here, hold down your looping sample, at the end of the loop hit that again, it'll automatically load into the buffer and set the buffer length to be amenable to those contents, which is a great way if you want to form like a basis for something. You'll also may or may not notice that it populated this blank square here with a little glowing thing. That's a snapshot. So whenever you load a snapshot, it loads all of the state information associated with that snapshot, as well as 3 audio files, 1 for each buffer, so that you can like quickly return to past performances or to the current performance. One big idea here is I want you to be able to use just this and not only like generate audio you're excited about, but also store that audio and be able to iterate on it endlessly. Hypothetically, you could start out with like only external sources, populate this with a bunch of snapshots and sample material, and then load snapshots and do whole performances that way, which is approximately what I'm hoping to do, although I do like sampled snares more than programmed snares and bass hits and guitars and things like this. So I do have quite a few samples loaded on here. Yeah, you can also save a snapshot without using the record arm button just by pressing this. So if you ever like what you're hearing, press this and you'll get a new glowing dot that just is that thing you're hearing. And those are persistent across reloads. you're going to want to occasionally empty your snapshots folder though, because it will just like fill up the entire grid pretty quickly. In an individual jam, you'll maybe end up between using this and having snapshots you intentionally want to save, like 20 or so files or something. Also, now I remember what this button does. This button stores a cue point. And so here I can go back to different points in the audio buffer using this second row whenever I don't have any submenus open. But I can also store a custom point because like maybe my snare isn't exactly on one of these and I want to get specifically the snare. So I can create a cue point, which will also populate an empty slot, and those will blink just like the tap tempo is blinking. So you can tell the difference between different things, even though they're all kind of kept in this one part of the grid, where this sort of oscillating, glowing effect is a snapshot, static brightness is a sample, and anything that's blinking is a cue point. So you create a cue point by tapping any empty slot, which is any unlit button. So I'm gonna go ahead and get some audio material in here off the atrium. And then let's go ahead and increase our length so that I can drop some other sounds in as well, like those guitars from earlier. Oh, record wasn't on. Okay, cue point. Here's a cue point. Here's a cue point. If you want to, for instance, I could be like, well, I want this one to be a kick. So I'll store that. A little sloppy there at the end, but let's go ahead and reduce the size massively. Cool. Slow it down. So that's an important idea here, is like being able to jump around in the buffer while placing things by just hitting two buttons at one time if you know where you want something to be. And if where you want something to be is like indicated by a cue point, then you can drop the cue point and then like hit that cue point again and hit the thing that you want to have occur at that moment to get, I claim, pretty cool effects. Yeah, so like one strategy here is just create like a big, wild, like ambient thing by looping a bunch of external sources and sounds that you have on here and whatever, and then drop 2 cue points at particularly interesting moments, or 3 cue points. Make one of those a kick, one a snare, and one a hat by like hitting the cue point while hitting your kick, and hitting the cue point while hitting your hat, and hitting the cue point while hitting your snare. And then you can finger drum something with record arm activated, and then you'll have a beat that has, you know, these timbral characteristics of this improvised ambient thing. As just like one example of something to do. I think that basically covers the features. I haven't tested, I made it 3 tracks because I could, not because it seemed like, not because I really have ideas for how to use them. So I haven't tested out the 3-track functionality basically at all. So if anybody is excited about the fact that it's Samsara with 3 tracks and wants to put a little bit of time into testing that, I'd really appreciate it. I'm at like, you know, probably 50 hours that I've put into this at this point, and I just kind of want to spend some time working on some samples that I want to run through it, and some atrium patches that I want to run through it, and not worry too much about developing additional features and stuff. Other directions that I could imagine this going include some kind of like MIDI clip functionality where you can like put short MIDI files onto it, or even design short MIDI files, launch those from here to control external devices, and automatically have the play have that material captured so that you can then manipulate it sort of iteratively. I've also thought about maybe having some generative things related to like drum programming techniques that are pretty simple, but that I've prototyped on the IntelliGel Metropolix, and then could imagine loading onto here instead of having to use external stuff to sequence the things that you're running into it. You could have more sophisticated sequences that are stored for later recall, and also do so like without committing to the audio. Another thing is having individual samples behave differently. So like enabling looping for samples, enabling latch mode for samples, enabling samples that whenever they play, no matter what, they don't go into the buffer. These kinds of things are all somewhat exciting, but like I don't feel like I've played enough with the device to know which of these directions I would be most excited to pull it into, and I don't want to end up with something that, you know, has too many pockets. I think right now it's pretty simple, it's very immediate, and it's kind of down to your own like textural sensibilities and rhythmic imperfections and taste to shape it and shape its output, as opposed to ending up with something that's got, you know, really opinionated generative sequencing in it, or where you have to spend a bunch of time prepping a bunch of MIDI files, or at least feel like you have to because the feature is available, or whatever else. Yeah, so I would love it if some other people could spend some time with this and give me some feedback, and also help find various bugs. Thank you.